Welcome to Macabre Miscellanea, a curated collection of creepy curiosities. Tonight, we have a practical man with a practical problem. 3 ghosts in his house: a man, a woman, a little girl. None pay rent. They keep moving his things, drink his beer. There are worse roommates, but there also happens to be fates worse than haunting. I'll leave it to you to decide which side of that equation applies here. Tonight's tale, ghost story. Turn down the lights. Let's begin.
Hi, my name's Flint, and my house is haunted. I know how that sounds. I'm not one of those guys. I don't burn sage or talk to crystals or watch those shows where some idiot with a thermal camera creeps through a dark hallway and acts surprised when the thermal camera picks something up. I'm a practical man. I fix things when they break. I have a label maker. But I've got 3 ghosts, and I've counted them more than once. And 3 is what I keep coming up with. I've never told anybody about this before, mainly because I don't got anyone to tell. I live a solitary life, if you can even call it a life. Don't get out much, just home and work. I sit in front of a computer all day and in front of my TV at night, and that's pretty much the whole of it. Same thing every day. I'm so entrenched in my routine, I don't think even dying could interrupt it. So I don't got friends to tell, and I'm not one of those guys who needs to cry about his feelings on a podcast or whatever, but I feel like I need to tell somebody before I go completely nuts. A guy could lose his mind living in my place. Don't get me wrong, I'm completely stable. No dogs giving me instructions or anything like that. I just need to get this out. Maybe I should just move. But who am I kidding? I should tell you about the job first because it's relevant. I work in data processing, have for a long time, long enough that I've stopped counting, which is probably its own kind of warning sign. I sit in my cubicle, stare at my screen, don't talk to my coworkers, and they don't talk to me. And at the end of the day, I go home. I like it that way. You stay under the radar. Nobody asks you to do things. The days blur together, even before any of this. One Tuesday is pretty much every Tuesday, and that stopped bothering me sometime around year 4. It's like being invisible, but on purpose. I get home right after sunset, same as always. Up before dawn, home after dark. I can't remember the last time I saw natural light through my own windows on a day I wasn't at work. Between the commute and the cubicle and the TV, it's all just inside. One long inside. It's really killing me, if I'm being honest. But a guy's got to make a living. So, the ghosts. There's a family of them, which I did not see coming. A man, a woman, and their little girl. They don't interact with me, and mostly don't interact with each other, which honestly describes most families I've met, so maybe that part's not so supernatural. The man I've got no name for yet. He's younger than I expected, late 30s, which, if you're going to haunt somebody's couch for eternity, seems like a real waste of an eternity. He's got the build of a guy who was athletic once and then discovered couches. Parks himself on mine every night, takes the remote, watches whatever's on. I come home and he's already there, settled in like he paid for the place, flipping channels like he's looking for something he knows he's not going to find. I have a system with the remote. I keep it next to my easy chair where I can reach it without moving, which is the whole point of a remote control. But every night I get home and it's on the couch next to him. Every single night. I've started hiding it. he finds it anyway. The little girl I usually find asleep on the couch. 8 or 9. Blonde hair, the kind of face you'd put on a greeting card. Little pajamas with the feet in them. She shows up after he does, falls asleep at the other end of the couch, and that's her whole evening. Honestly, out of the 3 of them, she's the least aggravating. She's quiet. She sleeps. I could use more roommates like that. The woman I'll get to. The woman is a whole other situation. 3 ghosts, all of them convinced they live here. None of them paying a dime toward the mortgage. Welcome to my house. The first real incident was a Tuesday, I think. Like I said, they blur. I got home the usual time, right after sunset, dead on my feet the way I always am. Dropped my keys on the hook by the door. I'm particular about my keys. I like them on the hook, not on the counter. Not in my pocket, on the hook. And went straight to the fridge for a beer. No beer. I could have sworn I had a 6-pack in there. But the fridge had a Coke, some leftover something I couldn't identify, and a general attitude of disappointment. I took the Coke. Fine. I've had worse Tuesdays. I went into the living room to catch the news, and the TV was already on. Channel 11, some home improvement show, a guy in Arizona explaining why you'd want travertine over ceramic in a high-traffic kitchen. I don't have a high-traffic kitchen. I don't really have a kitchen. I have a room with a fridge in it that I pass through on the way to the couch. I know I didn't turn it on. I'm not that far gone. I switched to 6 for the news and sat down in my easy chair. Before my second cheek hit the cushion, it flipped back to 11. I switched it back to 6, back to 11. I figured the remote was acting up. I just bought the thing, which is exactly when electronics decide to develop a personality. So I got up to change it manually. I'm standing there at the TV, finger on the button, 6 o'clock, when I hear from behind me,
"What the hell?"
I turned around. There's a man on my couch, late 30s, maybe 40, the build of a former athlete who has made his peace with the couch. Sitting up now, holding my remote, looking at me with an expression like I'm the one who doesn't belong here. My first thought was, vagrant. Some guy found an unlocked door and helped himself to my living room and my beer and my remote control. And now he's looking at me like I'm the problem. I said, loudly, "What the hell are you doing in my house?" He pointed the remote at me and flipped it back to 11. I want you to understand the nerve of that. The sheer, breathtaking nerve. Breaks into my house, drinks all my beer, takes my remote, and when I confront him, he changes the channel at me, like I'm the one who needs to be managed. I grabbed a vase off the end table, not one I was attached to. I've never been a vase guy. I think it came with the place. And smashed it on the floor and told him to get out before I called the cops. He bolted, off the couch, out the door, gone so fast I barely saw him move. I stood there a second, vase pieces on the floor, Coke in my hand, news on the TV. I remember thinking it was strange, a guy like that running so hard from a cop threat. But I was tired, and the news was on, so I sat down. The news was on for exactly 4 minutes before it switched back to Channel 11. I went to bed. After the remote incident, I figured I had my answer. Vagrant, case closed. Weird night, moved on. Except the TV kept switching to 11. Every night, come home, flip it to 6, sit down. 5 minutes later, back to the home improvement guy and his opinions about tile. I bought a new remote. Same thing. I unplugged the TV entirely one night and went to bed. And when I came back downstairs in the morning, it was plugged back in and on channel 11. I stopped fighting it. I know more about backsplash tile than any man should. A few nights later, I fell asleep in my chair. Don't even remember doing it. 1 minute the game was on. Next minute, I'm waking up to a living room gone quiet and dark, except for the TV doing its late night thing. Infomercials mostly, except it kept cycling back to some documentary about the 1969 World Series. Like that's what people want at 2 in the morning. No idea who won. Don't care. I flipped it off and got up to head to bed. That's when I saw her. Little girl, asleep on my couch. Blonde hair, face like a Cupid doll. Little blue pajamas with the feet in them. Sound asleep, one arm hanging off the cushion. I've heard of leaving babies on doorsteps. I have not heard of leaving a sleeping child on a stranger's couch while the stranger is sitting 4 feet away watching the same TV. I crouched down next to the couch, close enough to see she was breathing, and tried to figure out my next move. She must have felt me there because her eyes opened, still half asleep, blinking slow, the way kids do when they're not quite back in their bodies yet. She sat up, rubbed her eyes with both fists, swung her little legs off the couch, like she knew exactly where she was going. I got down to her level. "Hey, pumpkin, you okay? Where'd you come from?" She didn't even look at me, just stood up and started walking, still mostly asleep, heading for the doorway where I was crouched. I figured she was going to walk into me, so I stayed put, thinking the contact would wake her up enough to tell me something useful, like whose kid she was and how she got into my house. She walked through me instead. And I mean through. Not around. Through. It felt warm. Like standing over a heating vent on a cold morning, that specific warmth that comes up from the floor. Lasted half a second, and then she was past me and gone up the stairs, and I was still crouched in the doorway, frozen, and I believe I may have wet my pants. I'd like to tell you I handled it with dignity. I did not. Then the shock hit me. Not the electrical kind, the other kind. The kind where the world slips sideways and you're somewhere else entirely. 35 years. 35 goddamn years. And they let him go. No seniority, nothing. Not one of those 35 years meant a thing when it came right down to it. Budget cuts, they said. Restructuring. And now what? Back on the job market? At his age, he'd almost rather. Then I was back on my floor, kneeling in my own living room with wet pants and a heart rate that had some serious catching up to do. I have no idea whose thoughts those were. My whole life has been the same job. I've never been laid off, never had to think about going back on the job market. I sat down on the couch where the girl had been and stared at the wall. Call a priest? Call a doctor? Call someone who handles both? My legs didn't have it in them to make it upstairs, so I pulled the throw blanket off the back of the couch, turned the TV back on, and slept right there with the lights on. The home improvement guy was still going when I woke up. From that night on, weird was just the nightly forecast. A few nights after the girl situation, I went upstairs to get a shower like I always do after work. Force of habit. You come home, you clean up, you feel like a person, Again, done it the same way my whole life, and I wasn't about to stop just because my house had become a way station for the recently deceased. I did what I needed to do, stood in front of the mirror to shave, and that's when the door opened. Woman, mid-30s, dark hair, bathrobe, walked in like she owned the place, which, to be fair to her, from her perspective she probably did, and didn't even clock me standing there with half my face covered in shaving cream, looking like Kenny Rogers. I pressed myself back against the sink as far as I could without actually climbing into it. After the girl, I wasn't taking any chances. The last thing I wanted was another round of the warm, fuzzy feeling and its associated consequences. So I stayed very still and watched her walk to the shower, drop the robe, and turn the water on. I'll say one thing for her: she had a nice rack for a dead girl. I'm not proud of that thought. I'm just telling you what happened. I grabbed my razor and my shaving cream and took the whole operation down to the kitchen sink, which is not ideal, but considerably better than the alternative. I found something out that night, though. Ghosts can feel temperature. I know this because when I turned the hot water on in the kitchen, I could hear her all the way upstairs, carrying on like I'd done it on purpose. I mean, maybe I left it on a little longer than necessary. But that's between me and the hot water heater, so that was my life for a while. Come home, fight over the remote. Lose, watch tile. Find things moved, put them back. Find them moved. Again, the remote kept migrating to the couch. My keys, they liked, on the kitchen counter instead of the hook by the door. My wallet, they kept moving from the dresser to the nightstand, which is not where my wallet goes. My wallet goes on the dresser. I've kept it there my entire adult life, and I see no reason to change now. Every night, I'd put everything back exactly where it belonged, and every night they'd move it again like we were playing the world's most pointless game. I started hiding things. Didn't help. They found them anyway. And the mess. God, the mess. I'd come home to dishes in the sink, shoes in the hallway, the general state of someone lives here that I did not authorize. I'm not a neat freak, but I have a system, and the system was being systematically dismantled by people who were technically not even alive. The worst was the dining room table. I came home one night and the whole thing was buried in tax forms and receipts, stacks of them, spread out like someone had been working through them all day, which I suppose they had, from their point of view, most already filled out in handwriting that wasn't mine. The name on everything was Gaines, Robin Tammy Gaines. I had to gather up every one of those forms and take them down to the furnace when I should have been watching the news and having a cold one, standing there feeding someone else's tax documents into the fire, annoyed out of my mind. And I keep looking at that name. Gaines. I know that name. I'm standing there with a fistful of Schedule C, and I know that name from somewhere, and I can't.
Mr. and Mrs. Gaines, I really think you're going to love this house.
The woman was all smiles, folder under her arm, leading a young couple through rooms I knew like the back of my hand. My rooms, my hallway, my living room, my scratch on the hardwood near the stairs. This is my house. What the hell is she doing showing my house? The young guy, Rob, I guess, looked around with the expression of a man doing math he already knew the answer to. His wife was small, dark-haired, the kind of pretty that's going to hold up. She was already imagining where the furniture would go. People do that. Walk into a place and start moving things around in their heads before they've even asked about the water pressure.
We'll take it,
Rob said. Didn't even have to ask her. The realtor smiled the smile of a woman about to make a commission.
Wonderful. Now, just for full disclosure, it's not a big deal, really, but the previous owner,
Then I was back in my basement with a fistful of ashes and the furnace ticking down. Previous owner. I stood there a minute. Then I went upstairs and watched the tile guy. Some things you file away to think about later, and later never comes. That's just how it goes. A man's got a routine. Then came Thanksgiving. I came home one night to the dining room table spread out like a magazine photo. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn, the works, 6 place settings, candles lit. If I was on death row, I'd request the same thing, maybe with a couple cold ones on the side. I figured they were expecting company, their company, not mine. But the food was there, and I hadn't eaten a real meal in I couldn't remember how long, actually, ages. So I sat down and helped myself. I ate half that table. It was good, too. Really good. The kind of meal that reminds you what food is supposed to taste like. I was feeling pretty charitable toward my ghostly roommates, right up until my stomach started making noises like a backed-up drain. Then came the cramps. I spent the rest of the night in my easy chair, sweating and moaning, curled around my midsection, convinced I was dying. Which, looking back, is funnier than it felt at the time. They'd had enough of me. I can see that now. An uninvited house guest who fights you for the remote, runs cold water while you're in the shower, sits down, and eats half your Thanksgiving dinner without being asked. From their side of things, I was the problem. I was the haunting. They started packing. I came home one night, and the whole place was in boxes. My stuff, all of it, packed up, neat and labeled. Every box marked the same way, shipped to Rob and Tammy Gaines. The nerve, the absolute nerve. Bad enough they'd been moving my wallet and drinking my beer and commandeering my remote for months. Now, they were boxing up my belongings and shipping them off to themselves like I was the one who needed to go. Conceited bastards, the lot of them. This is my house. I'm not getting evicted by a family of corpses. I unpacked everything, put it all back exactly where it belonged, every item in its right place. Wallet on the dresser, keys on the hook, remote next to my chair. Took me half the night. They packed it again. I unpacked it again. This went on 4 times. 4 times they packed up their lives, and 4 times I put my things back where they went, because this is my house, and I'm not going anywhere. By the 4th time the fight had gone out of them, the boxes stayed empty after that. Well, that's my story. I wish I could give you some kind of epiphany at the end of it. A white light, a deep truth, some wisdom I picked up along the way. But I've got nothing like that for you. Just a man and his house, and the people who keep moving through it. They're not the same ones anymore. That's the thing I didn't expect. The Gaines family moved on eventually. Even they couldn't stay forever, I guess. New ones come. They stay a while, drive me crazy, move on. It's like living next to a bus stop. I'm still here, though. I keep thinking I should move, get a fresh start somewhere. But who am I kidding? I can't move on. I'm too much of a creature of habit for that.
And that was Ghost Story, an unpleasant little reminder that a deed, a favorite chair, and a fixed routine do not always amount to possession. Some houses keep former tenants the way other people keep receipts, and they can be just as hard to throw away. If you enjoyed tonight's story, subscribe for more, leave a like, and share it with someone who appreciates the darker things. New original horrors from Macabre Miscellanea arrive every week. Until next time, remember, if your keys keep moving, the house may be filing a complaint.